yeux de lumière qui voient passer au loin les oiseaux.
Okay, so kind of easygoing start, hopefully. If you can not understand me, please just make yourself known, shout, scream, whatever. We have one thing in common, definitely. We are all not native English speakers. I'm not native English speaker myself. Lived for, I don't know, a couple of years, let's say, in an English-speaking surrounding.
Can I translate to them? Can we translate to them?
Again?
Can we translate to them? They don't understand.
He didn't understand. Okay. I try as well to speak up. I know that I have a relatively low voice, but just try to concentrate yourself. And I try as well in the run of the entire sessions to be interactive, where this room is not really suitable for it, but we manage. As I said, I'm not native English speaker, which means I do not come from an English-speaking country. I lived for about 20 years in an English-speaking country. This is, interestingly enough, a Center for Cultural Law or something, Cultural Law Studies. You asked, you lived in China, you don't speak Chinese. There are many different tiny things, really, that will be important when we talk about human rights law. And human rights law, any law, is something seemingly very abstract. It's written down, you have your strictly defined terms, your laws. They are limited in their scope. This is the clarity, but at the same time, there is so much playing a role. For instance, language. We have all, basically, at least, we all have WeChat. With this, we have this fascinating thing of auto-translation, which is fascinating, but don't rely on it, and especially don't rely on it when it comes to details. Because, and this is the tricky thing with law, it is on the one hand this very general thing, and on the other hand it's a very detailed, cultural dependent thing that depends on context. And even now talking about a little bit introduction is already something relevant there. It's difficult. I'm born in Germany, had been reared up there, lived in Ireland, traveled from Ireland into different parts of the world, especially European Union, but as well Japan, Taiwan, China, then recently Cuba, I don't know where, and experienced really what it means that you are talking about the same thing in terms of language and you misunderstand each other. Because the concepts are different. And sometimes it's very clear why. Ireland has a population of 5 million people. Ireland. CHANGSHA has a population of about, well, it's not clear officially, about 6-7 million. Some people say it's actually 9 million because of the migrants. So obviously, when it comes to law, when it comes to regulations, you need a different way of regulating this. A country with 5 million people is kind of easy to steer, easy to govern. A country with I don't know how many cities where people say, well, a city of 5 million people is medium-sized. These are completely different dimensions. And in many cases, you cannot really nail down to one point that you say, okay, it is only this figure. It is the climate. It is the age of the population. All these things matter. Distances, technology. All these things matter, but at the same time, it is not all. And there are some things you cannot really figure out what exactly it is. Well, in terms of qualification as well, briefly, I studied sociology, political science, economics, and philosophy, and did law at a research institute. So I'm not a trained lawyer in the traditional sense, but got this qualification basically by research. So we'll get known to each other over this, I don't know, 3 months or so, 2 months. Some organization things in the first part, because I see it as well, please switch off or put the telephone aside. It distracts. Computers supposedly can do multitasking, humans can't. And it distracts. If you have a question in terms of language, these things are excellent as dictionary. Still don't use it. Actually, I lived in Italy and had been in the nice situation that I was communicating with somebody and tried using the mobile phone as dictionary, and she said, no, leave it aside. Just try to express yourself, try to find your own words, which is an excellent way of learning language. You can't sit down, learn the vocabulary, and apply it. You learn the meaning, you learn the language by just speaking it and forcing yourself, thinking as well. If there is a term you don't know, you don't understand, ask. We can discuss it. And this is part of learning. This is part of, as well, international courts. We will come back to this later. International courts always have international judges, meaning from different countries. And they have to find the same meaning or one meaning for the thing they are looking at. And there is always one person, one judge, who has to be there from the country concerned. Meaning, if it is a case against China, against Palestine, against Germany, against I don't know what, there is a judge from Germany, from Palestine, from Germany, who knows the situation there. It does not that he is right. It does not mean that he is right. But at least he can say, make clear what is meant by somebody crossing the street when the traffic light is red. Is it a criminal offense or not? Of course, not a human rights issue. In some countries, they would laugh at you. In some countries, it is very strict.
Abandonné au sable blanc, blanc l'innocence.
Well, one thing that strikes me is that nobody studies law to get a job as a lawyer and make money. I don't know why your father kind of pushed you into this. Perhaps that was the reason for him. That's a good perspective. You make money, you get a job. I don't know, but at least from your side, nobody said, yeah, of course, I have to do something. I have to get a job. I have to get a job that pays well. So law is an option.
Sorry to interrupt you, teacher, but in our country, for example, lawyers, like, they didn't earn, they don't get too much money.
They don't have too much money.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on. It depends on. It's like with medical doctors, some they survive well, but not much more. And some make a fortune. And that is part of it. I come from a social law background. Actually, we have difficulties to find people who study social law because there's no money in social law, basically. If you are defending people who don't have money, engaging yourself for the rights of people who are disadvantaged, basically you get money for it, but that's usually not much. If you, I'm not good in this, but if you have a superstar who gets divorced with a fortune of a couple of billion, you probably divorce two couples of them, and then you have enough for a couple of years to live on. So it depends on what you are doing, really, and I'm afraid that this area of human rights, United Nations, it is at least not the perspective I would choose if I really want to make money. You get a good income, reasonably good income, but not the top. Or you are really on the top and they have as well a good fortune. But I think it is important to think really about these, in a way, pragmatic things. Why do we choose something? Are we kind of pushed into something and make something out of it? Or are we going there, really going there, with this conviction? I always, since I've been child, I always wanted to do blah, blah, blah. Some people say this. Usually I do not believe them. You are coming with some conviction into a job, and then you still have to make something and adapt it to your needs or to your wants. And this is, I think, important to be honest about getting a job or studying something, and as well about what you are doing in this job. Taking a little bit possibly of illusions of one of the or the other. Engaging for human rights is not that you have a standard from wherever you have it, and then you go there and you do what you think is right. I said I lived in Ireland. One of the former presidents of Ireland, Mary Robinson, feminist, got into this job as president of Ireland, which was an exception. And then after this job, she left to the United Nations. I don't know exactly what she did there, a high commissioner of something. And I'm not sure how long she did this job, but basically she was thrown out of office. that was a masterpiece of the United States of America. They kind of pushed her out and they didn't like her engagement. And this is exactly human rights. She was too engaged in the understanding of the United States, and they stopped it. So this is important as well. Be honest and don't have this illusion of, yes, I do this, and this is what I can manage throughout my life. Especially such a job is a difficult one. And it is a difficult one because we have to see one thing as well, not only human rights, but in general law is an area of contest. As I said in the beginning, it seems to be very clear what law states. When I did this research study qualification, my professor gave me a book. It had been the title of it had been Struggle of Law. I think I mentioned it, Jering, the struggle of law, the struggle for law. And the thesis of this book is law, the definition of law, the definition of right is always something that has the two sides. On the one hand, it is a very formal process. Traffic light is red, don't go. At the same time, it is a question of justice. So a very simple case. Traffic light is red. You are not allowed to cross the street, right? There is a child playing and walking on the street. And it's a street with traffic. What do you do?
Stop the vehicle, child.
Hmm?
Stop. The child doesn't know something.
It's a conflict. The traffic light is red. You are not allowed. At the same time, you are obliged to avoid that something happens to the child. Then, of course, there can be many other implications. How likely is it that the child is really hit by a car if you don't intervene? How likely is it that you cause an accident by helping the child? There are so many implications. You said you don't want to be judge or you don't want to be lawyer. This is what you always have to think. All these implications, sometimes very detailed. And then you come to this point. I mentioned as well in the beginning, this is the Center for Culture, Cultural Law Studies. There are simply some things that you can boil down to culture when it comes to law. What is the understanding of law we have? And on what does it depend? One, but kind of organizational thing. I mentioned Gehring. I will frequently mention some names of lawyers, of scientists in this area. You will get, well, some of you are probably already used to it. You will get more and more used to it. We never, ever are sitting down or standing here or doing whatever and have our own ideas. We always refer to one or another work had been done, and this is what we have to do. Basically, especially when it comes to academia, as well when it comes to theoretical work, we have to link what had been done in this area. And we will come back to this later. Human rights, if we take it from the United Nations, from the Universal Declaration, you can set a late date for it. When this was decided, it goes back to ancient times. So there was always something, but they discussed already. They have had this idea, and you have had this struggle as well, contest. So sometimes I just mention the name to have it mentioned. Sometimes you have in the literature, you got this literature, you have texts there. Look them up, read a little bit. Some we will read together in more detail. But sometimes it's good just to get an idea of, yes, there had been somebody else working on this. And this was 1872, I think, Gehring. So it's not a new thing. Whenever you are reading, look, when was this written? It is sometimes important to know this is a book that had been written 100 years ago or 200 years ago. And sometimes we don't really mention it. It sounds like if it had been written today. And sometimes you find texts today. You think, good God, this was 200, 300 years ago. This language is so conservative, it's so stubborn, so stiff. And then you see, oh no, it's 1 year. So it is important. It's called name dropping. Just mention a name, perhaps as a stimulation for you to read, or at least that you heard about it at some stage later when you are sitting then in New York or Vienna in the United Nations office and doing your job. On an anecdotal note, Vienna and New York, the head offices, doing the most important work. I had been once in the office in Vienna with a group of students, and we had been told part of our work here, daily work, is to prepare meetings, and part of this is who is sitting where. This is very important in terms of hierarchy. Do you use alphabetical order, size of the country, different things? Where do you put the flags? In many cases, we are dealing with symbolical politics. It doesn't really have any effect, objective effect. But it is giving an important signal. And sometimes the signal is more important than the message. I sent today the file with the quotes. You got it?
Yeah.
You know this?
Yeah.
What is this?
Looks like a bird quote.
Hmm?
It's not a bird, it's a rabbit. Like, sweeping rabbit.
Oh, rabbit and bird. Everyone seems different. Psychology.
It's a dog. Rabbit.
Psychology.
That's exactly the point. It depends on how you look at it. And sometimes it happens with this kind of picture. If you once look at it and see the bird, and somebody says, no, it's a rabbit. Of course it's a rabbit. This is the ears, you have the face there. You say, no, it is a bird. It is a duck. You cannot switch. It's so much ingrained what you see. You're just fixed on one side. And it is difficult to see the other. And this is our entire cognition, perception, that there are these different parts to it. And it is, in one way or another, not only what we see, and this is why I got this quote from Marco Polo. Marco Polo traveled China at a very early time. I don't know how many years actually it took him. And then he was talking to other people about the reports he gave. Because at that time, traveling was not as it is today. Even today, it is exciting and you see very different things. But if you have to travel 2 years or 10 years to another place to see something, it's a different story. So what he said is, I speak and speak, but the listener retains only the words he is expecting. It is not the voice that commands the story, it is the ear. We always use the language we know. It starts already there. If we do not know differences in temperature to describe them, we say it's warm or cold. It's not nippy. Nippy is something in between. It's a little bit cold, but not really cold. So we use the language, and we hear as well the language we know. We see the duck or the rabbit, but not both. Which means we are looking at the perspectives, and there are the other quotes, in academic work, in human rights research, in legal research, whichever kind of legal research. Basically, it's not really exciting. That's this boring thing. We do something that had been done for many, many years. We apply paragraphs. There's nothing new in it. And it's kind of routine work. And even on a personal level, then comes something, what you said, well, even this boring stuff makes sense, is exciting if I apply it in an area which I'm interested in. And there was another thing I found interesting when you presented yourself, that many actually come not really from a law background or want to go into law. Law is, of course, this discipline in a very narrow way. And at the same time, it is about political institutions, it's about government, it's about different things, it's about how people live together and how you regulate it. So normal science, the activity in which most scientists inevitably spend almost all their time, is predicated on the assumption that the scientific community knows what the world is like. We simply take things for granted. We know what a state is. We know what a nation is. We know what rights are. We know what justice is. And then we define it in the individual case. Normal science often suppresses fundamental novelties because they are necessarily subversive of its basic commitments. You suppress the rabbit or the duck because they don't go together. And the quote is actually from Thomas Kuhn, who used this bird-rabbit picture to clarify what it means to do scientific work. It means get known of the rabbit, even if you see only the bird. Get known of the bird, even if you see only the rabbit. And if you go to this, sometimes you see some paintings like this or drawings, and you are standing there half an hour and you see only the one thing, and whatever it is, a tiny movement, you see the other. And you say, wow, how is it possible? There is one kind of tension in the entire work in academia, in science, in studying something. On the one hand, we need what is called theory, or what is theory. And I have here a definition. It is a statement concerning a topic. Slow reading is another thing. One sentence takes a long time to read. Theory is a statement concerning a topic. So you have a statement and a topic, two different things. Relating to another in a way that it is possible to clarify the frames with few sentences, meaning from this one connection, you draw conclusions. Meaning you have a very tight framework that allows you to draw conclusions. The simple one, if you take the Latin alphabet, is B follows A. So if you go to the alphabet and you go through the different letters, you know if I say A, the next will be B, the next will be C, and the next will not be O. This is a theory. And you have this, or you can develop this theory by very simple means, that you observe the reality, a topic, and from there you have this conclusion. Why can you say, the law will help me to engage for children? Why can you say, law can help me to represent my state? There is a theory behind it. For instance, children need help. Children are weak and need protection or support. And there is another element of this theory. Law can support me, can provide a framework that makes it possible to help. Law can help me to represent or to work, engage for a state, because the state is something that depends on law, is defined by law. Try to build your own state. At 17, 20, leave the classroom and say, I am a state, or we are a state. It doesn't work. As simple as that. Because there are so many legal implications, the other way around as well, the state cannot say simply, I don't bother. That's not my thing. There are certain things, certain obligations that a state has, and these are legal obligations. And if we have a tight theory, we can say exactly this is what is going to happen if A, then B. There's no theory, no proper theory behind this. At least you have the two options: bird, duck, or rabbit. There's some theory, it is an animal. Nobody would say it's a flower.
What?
A flower. So there is also there is some theory. And it is as well this thing of what I said, a statement concerning a topic. It is a drawing of something, some animal. It is not the animal. This is important to keep in mind. especially if you go to court, you have your case, you will be lawyer, and you say, this is a duck. And somebody sits there and say, well, sorry, this is not a duck. This is a drawing of a duck, but not a duck. A duck has a body. This is just plain and flat. So this kind of precision is needed. And we all know, of course, if you say this is a duck, that you mean it is a depiction of a duck. It is a picture, it's a drawing of a duck. Everybody knows it. Nobody will contest and say, no, it is not a duck. It's a painting of a duck. Nobody will claim it is really a duck, and I'll get it into the frying pan tonight. And a theory is always, or has always a purpose. Meaning the perspective we take by looking at something is as well a perspective that depends on what do we want to do. We may say this is the drawing. We may say as well there is enough space around it and I can write something here and there. So the theory has a purpose. The theory wants to detect something we can do with it. And before we make a break, one sentence here. This is important for law. There's a little bit dissent around it. There are two ways of building a theory. One is affirmative, a problem-solving theory. Robert Cox was making this difference, saying we have so many immediate problems and we have to develop some theory about it. How do we get enough chairs into the classrooms tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock? And then you would have a critical, what he says, a critical theory, a critical perspective. And that would actually ask, why is it necessary to decide today how we get tomorrow 20 additional chairs into the classroom? Why can't we decide in advance? We know next year we will have the problem again. So we reshape the classrooms. We get in general more chairs. Or we get less students. There are different ways of critical thinking then. But it is a completely different approach to what theory is about. Do I just need a theory to solve here and now the problem I have? This child in the middle of the street is in danger. Or do I think of a way to say we have barriers that this cannot happen? It's too late for this child. But at least I know that this situation is likely to happen again and again and again. So I will think about a way of having a law, for instance, that makes sure that there is, or that there are conditions that something is not going to happen.
L'innocent, le sang du poète qui en chantant